Today we start a new main lesson block about shelters. All around the world, people have designed and built homes for themselves based on the climate where they live and the natural materials they have available. Some shelters are temporary, meaning they don't last long and would only be used for one night, a few weeks, or a season. Other shelters are permanent, so they are lived in all year round and last for many years. Some shelters are so strong that they have survived for hundreds or even thousands of years. Today we will learn about some of the shelters that were and are still being built by people living in cold northern climates like Alaska. If you drive north of Fairbanks for a while, you'll start to notice that the trees start getting smaller and smaller until finally, above the Arctic Circle, there aren't any trees at all. In those areas, people didn't have trees to make log houses or even frame in any kind of shelter. So they used what they had available, which was lots and lots of snow. Winter in the northern Arctic is long and cold, so long that by September the ocean starts to freeze over, and so cold that the ice soon forms a cover 6 feet deep. No wonder then that any moisture in the air freezes right away. On cloudy days it may come down as snow. On clear days the air is full of tiny silvery ice crystals. A new layer of white covers land and sea every day, packing down hard in some places and settling loosely in others. Trees have never grown in this part of the world. For centuries, people of the Arctic, the Inuit, built their houses of snow. They called them igloo in some regions, igluviak in others. Snow was everywhere, and the only tool needed was a knife of bone, antler, or walrus tusk. Depending on the size of a family, its igloo was big or small. Even giant igloos were built as places to dance to the sound of drums. Both light and heat were provided by a stone lamp called a kulik, burning seal fat and using the cotton-like seeds of a small plant for a wick. Of course, each igloo needed a chimney where hot air could escape, or the whole top would begin to melt and might cave in on the people. When many people lived in an igloo, they sometimes damaged its walls. Rather than continually patching their igloo, the family would build a new one. Often an igloo was abandoned because the family moved to a better hunting ground, leaving their old house to melt away in the summer sun. Igloos require a certain type of snow. You need to find snow that has been wind-packed. It's usually found on the tundra, very far north. This is very different than the taiga snow that falls in the woodland areas further south, like we have here in Fairbanks. The round dome shape of the igloo is the secret of its success. Wind sweeps over and around the snow house. It moves downward, pressing the walls further into the ground. In this way, the curved surface uses wind pressure to make the building stronger. A small snow house for emergency overnight shelter can be built in as little as an hour by 2 hunters caught in a storm, or by 1 hunter in 2 hours. In it, a person can wait out the storm for days without food by thinking small, not moving, using little energy, a little as animals hibernate. All you need to build an igloo is a snow knife and tundra snow. All snow houses begin the same way. A circle is marked in the snow. The first few blocks are cut out from the center. These measure about 1 yard or 1 meter long, 2 feet wide and half a foot thick, and weigh about 30 or 40 pounds. Each block is laid on edge, not flat like a brick, on the ground following the circle. The tops are shaved off at an angle, sloping upward and slanting inward. The next row of blocks is then laid, each block tilting inward slightly to narrow the circle. Rows continue to be laid in a spiral up towards a dome. Spiraling rows support the dome and prevent the walls from caving in. The keystone, or last block, is placed from the outside but fitted from the inside. Joints are chinked with snow. A low entrance tunnel is cut near the bottom of the shelter, so low that a person must crawl to get inside. The tunnel floor is about 1 foot lower than the inside floor and serves as a cold trap. A little bit like some of you might have an Arctic entryway in your house that keeps the cold air out. A snow house may be so small it will barely allow a person to lie down or stand up. But an igloviac can also be built much larger in a series connected by passages. Here, large families may spend the whole winter with each unit serving a different purpose. The main living space is always built higher than the entrance tunnel, which keeps out the cold. A platform built even higher for warmth is used for sleeping, working, and cooking. The way air behaves seems to have been understood by all northern peoples, and they used that knowledge to keep their dwellings warm. They knew that hot and cold air do not mix as if stirred up with a spoon, nor does air move down and back up the way people go in and out of tunnels. Cold air is heavy, so it stays down. In a tunnel, it acts as a trap, stopping more cold air from coming in and warm air from going out. Warm air is lighter, so it rises. That means the warmest area in a snow house would be closest to the dome. To make use of that warm area, the Inuit constructed a platform of snow along the back half of the dome. The small amount of heat coming from the human body or from a little soapstone lamp, using blubber for fuel and moss for a wick, collected here. The platform became the living and sleeping area. Some igloos were lined with skin, and this acted as additional insulation and stopped icicles from forming. Platforms covered with furs might be warm enough for babies to play undressed during the day. Snow walls are translucent. That means any light outside can seep in and brighten the inside. Some igloos also had windows cut above the entrance tunnel. These were made by replacing snow blocks with seal intestine or a slab of clear freshwater ice. The tunnel entrance would be closed with a large snow block at night. To strengthen the snow house, women sometimes lit several lamps to melt snow on the ceiling. The lamps were then extinguished and the igloo was allowed to get cold enough for the wet roof to harden into ice. Such snow houses could be so sturdy that people and polar bears have been photographed on top of them. When several snow houses were built and connected for family living, each would serve a special purpose. One might house parents and children, another grandparents who often kept a favorite grandchild with them. An aunt and uncle and their children might occupy another unit. Smaller igloos served for refrigeration and storage. Dogs were never allowed inside except to give birth and nurse their puppies. Another type of Arctic dwelling is called a quarmang or quarmak. It may be even older than the snow house. These were built in Greenland, the eastern Arctic, Baffin, and other islands of the high Arctic. In contrast to the snow house that melted with the coming of spring, the foundations of quarmangs seem to last forever. 1,000-year-old foundations can still be seen today. Whales were once plentiful in northern waters. Hunting for them in small boats on open seas was dangerous but worth the struggle. One big Greenland whale could feed a whole village for a season, and its bones provide a framework for the roofs of dwellings. The quarmang was usually built into the side of a hill. A ditch 20 feet or 6 meters long and about a yard or a meter wide was dug sloping upward and lined with heavy stone slabs. This tunnel, which ended with a step up into the dwelling place, resembled the cold trap of the snow house. The living area also had a foundation and low walls of stone or bone. The roof was made with whalebone, or if available, wooden poles. Animal skins were stretched over this and then covered with a thick layer of brush for insulation. Then came more skins, which were held down in the corners with rocks. A layer of snow added even more insulation. A window of semi-transparent seal intestine might let light in. The building of kwarmangs declined after the 13th century, as the Arctic grew colder during what is known as the Little Ice Age and forced families to move further south. Here in Alaska, where driftwood was found along the shores of seas and rivers, it was used along with earth to construct a winter dwelling. It resembled a house as Southern people know it, except it was built partially underground, a pit dwelling. The floor and walls were framed with wood, and poles were used to hold up a roof of brush. All was then covered with earth. Outside, the sod was shaped into a low, rounded hill, so that a wind would flow over it. The sod house used air pockets to conserve warmth, much as the snow house did. A low entrance tunnel trapped cold air and kept it away from the living space. Platforms were built for working and sleeping. Light entered these earth houses through a hole in the roof that also provided fresh air and let out smoke. This skylight was covered with skins at night or during snowstorms. 2 or 3 families might share a sod house through the winter, but they left it quickly as soon as the spring came. Earth offered a superb insulation against cold, but it was useless against spring rains. Water seeped through and made the building too damp even for these hardy people. When spring came, the snow house melted and rain turned the sod house to mud. It was time for families to move and look for a new hunting and fishing ground. The skins that served as roofs or blankets through the winter became, first, carrying cases during the move, then tents for living in. No matter what housing was used in winter, the tent was the summer dwelling of all the northern peoples. In contrast to winter, when the sun never set, there are days during the Arctic summer when the sun never sinks below the horizon. But it is never warm enough to melt more than a few inches of the rocky ground around the Arctic Circle. Under that, sometimes as deep as 1,000 feet, is permafrost, hard and waterproof as concrete. No trees can grow on this tundra, but a surprising wealth of vegetation appears for a few short weeks in the constant sun. Some of these small plants and exquisitely beautiful flowers may be hundreds of years old, yet only a few inches high. They feed musk oxen and caribou, which in turn become the food for the people of the north. The water's edge became a favored spot for summer settlements, as the sea teemed with fish, seal, and whales, and rivers filled with Arctic char. Caribou or seal skin was used to make boats for hunting and fishing, as well as clothing and tents. The tent of skin was the standard summer shelter of the north, but ways of building tents differed with different peoples. The tent of the Central Arctic Inuit came in many designs, but still resembled the snow house in plan. If wood could be found, it was made into frames and posts. Otherwise, whale bones or antlers that had been straightened were used. Seal skin was then stretched over the frame. The bed was placed at the back, but not raised, and no tunnel to stop cold entering was needed in summer. In this tent design, 2 pairs of poles were set up, 1 pair at the entrance and 1 pair at the edge of the bed. Then 2 cross strips were attached, forming a roof ridge. Behind the poles at the edge of the bed, 6 or 8 other poles were arranged in a semicircle. A large covering of sealskin was stretched tightly over this area. To allow light to enter, the front half of the tent was made of thin strips of skin or membrane. The entire tent was held in place by heavy stones. The door was formed by overlapping one piece of skin with another to keep wind from blowing into the tent. One stone kept the tent flaps closed. Farther north and west, another type of tent was used which needed only 3 poles. One strong pole was set up at the entrance and one at the back of the tent. A leather cord was then run over the top of both poles and fastened to stones on the ground. All was then covered with skin. The 3rd pole was placed leaning against the entrance pole to support the door flap. If no wood was available, the poles were made from walrus bones spliced together. Some tribes converted their summer tents into winter dwellings by covering them with shrubs for insulation and then adding a second skin cover. When this was done, snow walls were built around the tent to protect it from the wind. Today, few northern peoples live in these types of dwellings, but the snow house is still built for emergency shelter by those caught in storms, and survival kits still give directions for its construction. Tents remain the popular shelter of the Inuit during the summer fishing season. Many Inuit people still pass down the knowledge to their children of how to build the snow house.